Hey, what's up? Welcome to the channel. My name is George. This is the Model Railroad Show, and today we're talking about 5 common mistakes that people make when designing a model railroad. All right, model railroads. I mean, obviously, it's a model railroad channel. This is what we're talking about, right? So you want to build, you have space, right? And you want to build a model railroad that you can obviously put in that space. One of the most common mistakes I feel that people that defeat people before they start is they underestimate the amount of space that they have. They have in their mind this grand model railroad that they want to build, and they are limited to a 10 by 8 bedroom. Things can get very out of hand when you want to incorporate certain things and you don't have the real space to do that. You know, turnouts, they take up space. Some people call them switches. You'll hear me refer to them as turnouts. They take up space. The appropriate radius curves take up space. You have to allot for these things when you are, designing your railroad, and that in its end will lead to something that looks better. Not only looks better, operates better, and when it looks better and it operates better, you will get more enjoyment out of it. And let's be honest, you're here to enjoy the hobby, not be frustrated about it. So mistake number one, take into account the amount of space you have. All right. The other thing that people do is, they look at track plans and books, or they have an idea of what they want to do, and they throw realistic track planning just completely out the window. They don't even consider it. And the reality of it is, railroads, they run, they're kind of cheap. They want to do as much as they can with as little track as possible, because every piece of track that a real railroad lays down, it has to maintain. And it has to pay for the cost of laying that track and the people to lay that track and everything that goes into that. So overall, even though you might not think so when you're at some of these passenger stations or you see a freight yard, overall, railroad track plans and railroad track design is pretty simple. Okay. And when you keep it simple, in the end, it will, it will operate better. You don't want to, incorporate things like, you might not consider this into realistic track planning, but grades, grades can get out of hand very quickly. If you want to build a crossover and you don't have a lot of room to do it, ultimately what people wind up doing is they wind up putting, what they think might be a 3% grade build that into a track plan. And then they build that grade into a curve. And then the reality of it is, when you put roadbed on top of that grade and then you put track on top of that grade, you've now turned your 3% grade into possibly a 3.5% grade, and you've incorporated onto that turn. And if you're modeling in something like N scale, the trains aren't going to perform very well in that. You're going to get a lot of slippage. It's just not, you're not going to get, as I would say, the desired effect. But you're going to be frustrated by the fact that your trains are running poorly. And I'm not saying to not have grades at all, even though I have a very flat layout here. The reason I have a mostly flat layout here is because it ran along the river, and that's kind of how it was. But, I'm not saying don't include grades. What I'm saying is think about what in your space you can and can't include, and don't try to take a 2x4 layout and make, a big grade and a crossover there. Chances are it's not going to work out well for you. The other thing is overcrowding the layout. And again, this all ties into underestimating your available space. A lot of times people look at track plans that are designed in, in a book or laid out by a manufacturer. I feel like Markland is good for this. Like when you see some of these Z-scale track plans, they are literal spaghetti bowls. And there's nothing like, what are you doing with that? You can't even fit a building in a siding. It's just, it's too crowded, and it's easy to get too crowded. You can see I have an area of my layout here that I definitely thought was not too crowded. But to incorporate the scenery that I would have wanted to, it is, and we'll go over that a little bit later. But it's easy to get things overcrowded. Again, simpler track plans are ultimately a little bit better. You don't want to create a spaghetti bowl that not even you can understand what switch goes where, and everything is just curved and in and around each other. It's just, on paper, it might look great, but when you lay it out or you're trying to run it, it's probably, not going to look that awesome. The other thing is plan for your electrical, plan for your wiring. As I said in the last video, model railroading and electrical work for model railroading is a very different place than it was before the advent of DCC, where we had blocks to turn things on and off and everything was run by DC current. Now with digital command control, everything is run via digital commands that are, sent as, code or current to these trains, to the chips that are in them, for a lack of a more complicated explanation. Therefore, the wiring is very simple. So you can have one bus that runs all the way around your model railroad, depending on how big it is, and then you can have feeder wires that connect off of that one main bus. So, but the thing is, plan for it. Plan to how you want to run your wires, your bus wires. If you're building things on a door, hollow core doors aren't all that easy to get wires through. You can do it easily with things like skewers and straws. Or maybe you want to run your bus around the outside, carved into the foam. It's also a viable way to do it. If you're doing a bigger layout with some L girder bench work, to drill the holes to run your bus through and make sure that's in a proximity to your track, for easy troubleshooting. Wiring should not be rocket science when it comes to model railroads today. It's as simple as color coding things, keeping things organized, and knowing what tracks need to be insulated and where the insulators need to go and where your feeder should go. And it's not rocket science. Probably the last thing, really, the fifth thing, is just neglecting the scenery. Scenery can be a huge part of a model railroad. It helps you tell the story. It helps you tell where your model railroad is based upon. It tells you, what the railroad is doing. And if you're building something that's, like I have in Trenton, I have things in Trenton that you would recognize as landmarks of Trenton, such as like National Ceramic and the Taylor Ham Factory and Frenchtown Porcelain, those things, Terrell Brothers Silk. So things that will, help people when looking at it, identify an area and give them a sense of place. When you have these spaghetti bowl layouts, you're not able to incorporate a lot of scenery, and especially if you're modeling in a smaller scale, the huge advantage of modeling in a smaller scale is to make the trains fit into the scenery. You can have a hill behind an N scale train that is 10 inches high and it looks like an absolute mountain behind it. All right. That's one of the advantages. You can build full, 4 and 5 story buildings, in N scale, and they're actually not very big kits. So to allow for the footprint of those buildings, some of which are big, you can modify them, but it all depends upon what look you're going for. So don't neglect your scenery. We have high quality scenery products that we can use today, from things like static grass to the ground foam, to whether it's making your own dirt like I have here, which is a process. This is basically dirt from my backyard, or it's the water products that we have today, like the Walthers, is it Walthers, the deep pour water system, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's so much better than either just painting a board or painting foam and putting some water effects on it. And it's where the scenery technology has come is really amazing. Take advantage of it. And it'll help your railroad just even look and more realistic and help you enjoy it. All right. So those are the common things: underestimating space, poor track planning, overcrowding, the poor wiring, neglecting the scenery. Try and avoid those things, and designing your layout. You'll hopefully design a layout that you will be less frustrated by. And as I said, the less frustrated you are, the more likely you are to enjoy this hobby and grow within this hobby. And it is the world's greatest hobby. And that's all I got for today. So thank you for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button. Give me the thumbs up. Ring the bell so that you know when new content is uploaded. And I will catch you in the next one.